Welcome everybody to Central Oregon Fly Tyers Guild Zoom classes. And Sarah Jo, there she is. She's going to be working with you on and showing you some steelhead flies. And so Sarah Jo, take it away.
All right. So my name's Sarah Jo. If you want to find me online, I'm pretty much on Instagram right now at Sarah Jo Flies. Got a lot of fishy content up there. Today we're gonna look at winter steelhead flies because I don't know about you, but I'm on the coast and they're here. So officially for most people, they think it starts January 1st, but sometimes they come a little early. So definitely have reports of fish being in. I went one time so far, kind of checked it out for a couple hours and it looks good. So we'll tie some flies for that. We'll definitely go through size of the fly and we'll start kind of bigger and go through smaller because they really don't take long to tie it all, but we'll talk about when and where to use them. The first thing would be, these are articulated flies. So we'll be using shanks. There's a lot of different companies on shanks. I like the way these Sanos are shaped. I don't know. I just like the way they're shaped. So I use these most of the time. Sometimes you can tie a double. You can tie an extra big fly. See like that? There's two spots there. So there's these longer ones, but typically you're going to use like a 25 millimeter shank. And I know OPST makes them, probably Fish Skulls. I mean, it doesn't really matter. It's your personal preference. So we'll start by setting up the shank here. And the main thing is we got to attach the hook. For hooks, I've been through actually several different ones, and definitely when I started, I didn't think it mattered that much until I had some actually break on steelhead. And so now I'm pretty adamant about the thickness of the hook. I think that if you're trailering it, you have this bend here that's probably going to make that less. I've broken more on, say, like eggs and stuff, which are basically the same hook, than on a swing fly. I've only broken one on a swing fly, but my favorite is the Daiichi X Point. They're about twice as thick. I know this one probably says size 8. It's because I'm waiting on more hooks right now, but I usually use a 4 or a 6, and I do have some other ones over here. I have a few left over that I'll use when I'm tying these on. So when you're attaching this, and you can use a couple of things, and it really depends for you how much movement you want in your hook. I don't want a ton, so I like this Sanos intruder wire. It's pretty thick. It's the larger one. But you could use like a fire wire or any super heavy braid you could use. And so we're just going to end up cutting a little piece of that and tying it on. And what I'm using to tie it on is like either a 150 or even a 200 GSP, just something really strong that I can cinch down this wire and the hook with to make sure that it's not going to break off for any reason. So just started my little thread thing with the GSP. And then basically to make sure I can get the hook on. The nice thing too is you can tie these so the hook can come on and off. So if your hook's getting rusty, but the fly seems to be fine for whatever reason, you can just take these off. So typically you need some sort of, hemostat or something to clip these. I have on the bench by Dr. Slick, they're cutters and clippers. So it's nice because I can wire cut and then I can take and bend the end down so I can get the hook on. And that works pretty nice as far as not having to pick up 2 tools to do that. They also make a scissor, microtip scissor. And if you see where this little indentation is, those are wire cutters. So that's like super handy, actually, if you're tying nymphs or anything that you want to cut wire, but you don't want to deal with switching out and you really don't want to ruin your scissors. The micro tips here have a wire cutter on the inside.
Well, Rick Pay has a question for you.
Yeah.
Have you found much difference between a straight shank and one with a rear loop?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that I just am annoyed when I'm tying with a straight shank. So that's what I like about the Sanos is the rear loop. And I think they are a little sturdier. Sometimes if I need, and that's what we were talking about a little, if I need something super low profile, I don't think I have any floating around on the bench. I have to poke in my bow here. I actually do. By OPST, I might use that because they're, like I said, they're so low profile, but that's still a 25 millimeter straight shank, you know? But I just, they're a kind of a hassle to tie with, I think. So I do like the loop ones. I have never had any fall apart on the straight one. So I kind of just loop it over one side. That's the other thing too, is I think with the looped shank, it's easier to kind of keep this neat and clean. You know, with each step, it's like the less wraps you use all along the way, it's going to keep your fly really clean and tight, nice looking. So I kind of have secured that. It's not really secure yet, but I'm leaving it there so that I can kind of peek at this hook. And I'm just going to slide it through and kind of loop it around and hang it at the widest part where I'm going to need to get it off one day. And that way, then I can kind of pull it in and judge where I'm going to lock that down. I just want to make sure I can get it off. So I can get the hook off here. So I've looped it over like that and straight through. And that way I can pull, oops, I yanked on it too soon. And that way I can pull it back. But one day I can get it off too. So once I have that spot, I'm going to wrap up a little, and it is so imperative, cannot stress enough. When you get to the top here, if you do not fold this over, you will absolutely lose your hook. I don't care how tight you wind. So that is absolutely imperative there, that you bend that back and then tie it back a pretty good ways. That's when I get those micro tip cutters in there. And then when the wire, I mean, the wire is sharp, so just really want to kind of, I kind of loosely go over that a couple times before I, everything else is real tight, but that one's kind of loose until I go over the second time. And that way I know it's super tight and locked down. And that way I can be ready to tie. So at this point, I don't really need this thread anymore. It's going to become too thick, so I'm going to take it off. Man, there's so many options here. We're just going to do something basic, but you can switch the colors out 100 different ways. Color wise, there's a lot of different theories. Some people like to use the pinks and the purples when the fish first come in, and then go to blues and greens later when their physiology changed due to fresh water. Some people like to do it by clear and cloudy with black and or purple. Others like to look at the watercolor and either do a contrast or do a water, like if your water is green, then you want to put a green fly because the water is going to show off that color the best because it has the color. So there's a lot of theories on what you should use. I think all of those are actually great theories and probably work pretty well. Man, if you really didn't know, I think white would be the way to go because that absorbs all the color. And having said that, when Spirit River was where Hairline Dubbing bought it out, Bill Black used to he was, the UV2 guy, and he just really stressed to me how important it was. He said, he was watching me tie. He said, "You have got to stop tying with black thread." And I said, "What do you mean?" I felt like everybody tied with black thread. And he says, "No, you know, if you think about it, you're going to really kind of dull your color. If you're going to put dubbing down or anything, you really just want to tie with white." And when I say, I don't mean all flies, but like if you're going to lay a dubbing layer down like we're about to do, maybe use white thread until you get to the top and then choose the head. So now I'm pretty good about doing that. So, let's see. Bright. I want to get a little dubbing wax on here. You could do this two ways. I haven't had too much problem just running the dubbing up this way, but you could create a loop and spin a loop too. The main thing is that there's a nice little post that the dubbing is going to make, supposedly, at the top that your feather can flare out and around. So if this way just doesn't work for you, like I said, if this doesn't work for you, we can create a dubbing loop and we'll just do that so that you know how. Wire. So I'll just spins going. I'll give it a couple wraps. So I have a nice little butt end, and then I'm going to grab some guinea feather. This is what I use mainly. I mean, they come colored. You could use colored ones. There's tons of different colored packs. If you have a cape, the cape's cool because there's different kinds other than just the spotted. There's like a different pattern that the other ones have, but you just need to grab kind of a longer, pretty decent sized feather. And here's where I would say, especially right now, if you want your fly to be clean, you really need to prep your feathers. So I'm going to pull that back, trim this so there's no excess that can get in the way. That's a lot cleaner. Then I'll end up taking the tip and pushing that back like that. And laying that on there, and pretty much I'm just going to use this to kind of tie it in. Oops, hold on a second. I need to move my thread first. I'm just leaving a teensy bit of spacing to lay down this. You don't have to do this. You could lay it straight on top if you wanted. I don't want to run it all the way to the head, or I won't be able to get my feather and dress the feather in front, crowd the head too much. Space. And then I'm pretty much, I mean, I feel like this thing kind of palmers itself, but essentially just running it. You left a groove, then running it through the grooves like I'm doing. You could use hackle pliers. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. All right, so depending on how much color or flash, you could lay a little flash. I might just lay some on top. Spread that out. It's kind of wonky so far. All right, so same thing with the Marabou. It's really important if you're going to use Marabou to tie these, which these are Marabou Spey flies, so probably should do that. To get really select Marabou, probably don't want to go to a major distributor for this. Probably want to. I like the Pro's Choice at Fish Hunter. This stuff's really clean. There's a couple other brands that's good too. And then again, you want to prep your feathers. I kind of pre-prep these, but this is probably even still too much material. It's amazing how little material. So just kind of pull it off and have it ready. And then same thing, we'll grab the tip there. Tie this on. I would switch this out based on what color I want to do my head now. All right, so this is kind of the, all you gotta do is really palmer this up and hold the palmer when you're going around. Just to make sure that it doesn't lay on itself. So I'm gonna hold it like this. And around. Same thing, hold it again.
We have a
Like a-
question from
Yeah.
Bala.
Uh-huh.
When you use the shank type flies versus spay hook flies for steelhead,
Uh-huh.
or when do you do that?
Well, I mean, honestly, whenever I possibly can, because I think it gives you an advantage. So it's going to be harder for them to spit out a fly that has a trailer hook that's moving around as opposed to one that is just, straight. However, I mean, I really think that ultimately has to do with the size that you're trying to, create. Like, this is winter steelheads, typically bigger water and bigger flies. And that also will maybe depend on the river you're on a lot. It depends on how big the river is. But that's when I would do that, is basically size wise as far as what you're wanting to present.
Thank you.
Yeah. So basically I've just wrapped that around and tied it off. I probably need to tie that. You can see it's kind of made a nice little flare around the thing. The shank here. This little body. Let's see if I can't turn that. Kind of see that back profile. It's kind of what you're looking for. I'll dress the front to make it look like a fishy. Got a cautery tool here. I just had a couple little feathers sticking out. I'll clean it up. Again, there's so many things that you could do. I'll just throw a couple pieces of tinsel on the top here. And then for eyes, I mean, I think the jungle cock is effective. What can I say? These feathers look like eyes. So I don't have any. I have two capes, believe it or not. So I don't have any of the synthetic kind. I'm sure those work just fine too. But one thing you can do if you don't have that, and say you already have the guinea feathers, is you can try and find like a smaller or a more compact guinea feather. Let's see if I can. Should probably get another pack. And really just kind of peel off to like a little triangle here. And these look pretty good, I think. Maybe not quite as elegant as the guinea feather, but I think that's pretty effective.
Probably less expensive, huh?
Yeah, I mean, this is how, when I first started tying, I mean, both of my capes, I was lucky that both of my capes were given to me. So by other tires. So I'm sure I never would have got my hands on one. I mean, they're hard to come by, So I'm sure I wouldn't have got my hands on one, and I would still be making all of them like this. So put one more on the other side. And I mean, there's a few other feathers you could be using. I have these. Let's see what I got. I've made some with these silver pheasants, the same kind of process where I'm just making a little end. Those look kind of nice. Does anybody have a preference on their cure goo if that's what they're using? I've been playing around with different companies, and I think, well, we'll see, because I've only been using this a couple months now, but my favorite right now is the Solare.
Who makes that?
Solare, Solrez. I would assume the Z is silent.
Lrez. And the shops carry that?
Hairline does for sure.
Okay.
They have, this is like the super thin. This is like my new favorite one. I use this all the time. When I say we'll see, I mean, it's like I'm going to fish these nymphs and stuff that I'm using this and see how well it holds up, how long the backs and stuff hold up in the water. Because I think that's my issue with some of the, and they have like a thin, thick, and a flex. Two are hard, and this is a flex, but this is like a super thin, and I use that on all my teeny tiny stuff, and I use it as like an initial cure coat as well, and it seems to be holding up. I noticed that some of the others, it looks great, and then you're out fishing them, and after you fished them, I mean, I've some nymphs I've fished a lot of time, it's like if I'm out 60 days in a row, sometimes just a couple of them hold on, right? And they're just still good. And then the backs come off, and all the guides are used to it, and they just have their little thing and they stick it back on. And I'm like, I don't like I'm like, I get you're fine with it, but I'm not fine with it. So I'm hoping this product is going to terminate that issue.
So do you do a lot of product testing then?
Yes, a ton of product testing. I mean, and I would definitely say that I go fish alone a lot, and it's, I don't want to say it's unpaid, but it's like, it would appear to the naked eye I'm just and I am having a good time, don't get me wrong, but I'm never not working, I'm always testing a product or testing some flies, or I don't know, something. All right.
This is John. I've been using bone dry a lot, and I love that for Perdigon nymphs. It
Okay.
dries super super smooth and no tack at all.
Yeah.
And then the other product I've been using is their Flex. I had some orders for saltwater flies, and I use Flex on the heads, and it creates a little bit bigger head that way to push more water. And
Okay.
and they said that my customers have been using it for Dorado down in Baja, and they said it's just super super strong. So
Nice.
I've been
Great.
very happy with all their products so far.
That's good. I've heard good things about them too. I might have to try some of that and just do a little test against each other, you know. All right, so that's a pretty, you know, that's a decent sized fly. That's pretty big. I mean, I made this double one, but I don't usually make them that big. To be honest, I rarely use these unless the water's probably. You can see how that's, this is a little different. I used actually some peacock herring. And then I just actually have floss and, you know, some tinsel there. I should say whatever, French tinsel. So you don't necessarily have to use dubbing. In fact, this is kind of a smaller version, and that's the same thing when it comes to the body. It's not a wide profile, and I only did just a little bit of the peacock or a little bit of the guinea feather. I only did it about halfway up, just to kind of make it a little smaller profile. So we'll go through and tie another one. And this, I mean, it's almost the same, but I have definitely had a lot of people ask for specifically and swear by me tying them this way, which again, I think is just, this is kind of the smaller profile fly that's the same type of swing fly. So we'll go through the same process here a little bit quicker. Start with the GSP 200 again. Color preference, anybody?
I don't see any more in the chat. That means this is good because you're doing a great job here. I'm always so curious about how these different flies go together, and this answers some of my questions. We used to have to take a bigger hook and just have your stronger person or your hubby whack off the hook on the end, tie your fly, and then go ahead and put the other hook on it. That's how we got to it before they started manufacturing these different
Oh
loops.
yeah.
Yeah,
Just
it was like, he said, "You want me to, this hook was really expensive. You want me to cut that off?" Well, yeah.
that's how I started when I just like didn't have enough materials. I mean, I'm just such a
Yeah.
MacGyver. I'm like, I'll make it. If I don't have it, I'll make it, you know. And
Yeah.
before I had, you know, everything where I just had a few hooks, I was like, I need a shank so I can articulate something. It's like started cutting all my nice hooks up.
Yep. Well, don't have to do that anymore.
I know, I don't have to do that anymore. Right. Let's see my other white book. Just because it's Christmas, we'll keep with the theme. How about that? Take 2 or 3 strands of this peacock on here. Right. I'm a huge fan of the Logaturn. I don't know if anybody else is, but I have a lot of this and the Spey flat wire. You guys have any of that? I bought all of it. That was a no-no. When I found that stuff, I went online and went large, every color, medium, every color, add to bat. And I was like, yeah, $200, that's fine. I'm fine with that. $200 more, that's fine.
Well, it'll save you a lot of time in long run, right?
Well, my justification was I don't have to pay for anything. So for once, I'm
There you
just
go.
gonna buy something. I'm like, I'm supporting the industry. Mm.
Yep.
So I like to tie the wire on the bottom, across the bottom, just to kind of try and keep it a little more flat. So I put it away. I need to keep it out. I mean, you could definitely put this on a, thread this on a bob. I'm just gonna hold it myself. I'm not gonna do all that nonsense.
So you're adding a body color.
Yeah, this is like a lower profile. It's kind of gonna be the same thing, but a little smaller profile. Put my little green bud on there.
I got a question
Yeah.
here from Robin. You switch thread. What is the difference? You use
Yes.
the GSP 250 to tie in the wire.
Yeah, so that stuff is just so much thicker. So if I were to continue with that, it would just really start bulking up the fly. And then I would have a problem keeping it clean and making it look good and keeping the proportions on. It's like ultimately you want to use the thinnest thread that you can while maintaining the integrity of the fly. And that way too, you can control, we don't have body taper really on these, but if you were doing, it's like when you make little perdigons or something, I mean, you don't want to do it too small depending on the size because you'll be there forever wrapping. But if it's too big, when you try to make your body taper, it just doesn't matter how well you did. You're not going to be able to pull it off because the thread's too thick. So. And, I think probably a lot of people have heard this before. Breaking your thread is not the worst thing in the world because you ultimately want to have enough tension right before break, right? So you want to be having quite a bit of tension on the thread, not enough to break it, which means occasionally if you're breaking it, you're testing that tension limit, and that's a good thing. It's not too loose. Flies fall apart in water. So in order to make that feather stand up, like I'm gonna run some more peacock in front. So in this case, I don't think I'm gonna wrap it because the length of the feathers aren't gonna be short enough for me to really pull that off the way I want to. So if I'm not gonna wrap it, then I need to remove the center. If I don't remove the center, it just isn't gonna look clean. And still removing the bottom too, and clean up the feather. So now I'm really left with almost nothing. So it looks. Should probably switch back to random.
So the use for this fly,
I mean,
being-
this is just, I mean, you're swinging, you could make this as long as you wanted. You could, you know, I just made it pretty short here. I'm gonna add some eyes, but you're swinging in, say, I don't want to say low water, but lower fast moving water, swing water, you know. Let's see, I'll do this on this side.
so when you talk about swing water, what
Little-
do you
it's
look
more-
for?
I mean, this is like, I would say if you were looking at trout, like tail outs, the top of a tail out.
Mhm.
Like, what would consider to be like maybe nymphing water almost, but really it's that tail out. I mean, you're gonna start at the top, you know, if maybe there's a little waterfall that dumps down into a bucket, and right where the water starts moving, you're gonna start across at a 45-degree angle. So if you're straight across, you're 45 degrees and down, and you're just gonna swing the fly like this and add a few feet every time until you keep, it's kind of more of a downstream thing, you know?
Mhm.
And like, it's not your indicator slower moving stuff or dry fly type water. If we're talking trout, obviously I mean steelhead, but if that's your, you know, reference point, right?
Mhm.
It's gonna be a little faster.
So do you fish the whole steelhead season?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
pretty much, I think, gosh, I don't know, how many secrets do I want to give away, right?
Exactly.
Late season's good, and it's funny because, you know, I think, I mean, these are great, but there's just a time and a place for these. And pre or post storm is one of those times for me for sure, or like early season when you're getting the aggressive ones. I mean, it's not all the time, but they're definitely useful. But I think matching the hatch is so underrated when it comes to steelhead fishing.
We've
I
heard
mean,
that before. Yeah.
they're trout and they like to, behave like trout. We keep saying that, but then when it comes to actually us, feeding them like trout, we're not doing it. So I think that especially later on in the season, like
Oh,
people, it's funny because people at the end of the season, it's like April and they're still trying to fish eggs, and I'm like walking out. I'm the only one with a fly fishing pole in my part. I know like one other guy, and like I saw him yesterday on the river for opener, and he was holding, the struggle free stick, as we like to call it. My friend calls it a struggle stick, the fly fishing pole, and that is his nickname now, the struggle stick. And so when we get the hassle free or the struggle free stick, like the
Well-
one person I knew that was fly fishing didn't have his fly rod out, and I'm like, okay,
I have
So-
another question came up
yeah.
from Bala. Are there fly patterns that work best for both steelhead and trout?
Yeah, I would say like this without the trailer would be any wet flies, small wet flies work but great for steelhead and trout. I wish I had my fly box on me right now. That would be pertinent. Any really small, basically summer steelhead flies,
Mhm.
the little ones, those are great. Those little wet flies are
So
great.
summer or smaller, and then
Yeah,
or winter gets bigger.
winter gets bigger, yeah, because the water is usually bigger.
Okay, these are questions that are coming in.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so winter steelhead, bigger water, bigger flies, typically, and then summer steelhead, smaller flies. Like this would be no trailer and just hook only, little tiny fly. Even this would be too much. Really have to dial all this back. This would be half the size on the bottom and the top maybe for summer steelhead. So, I mean, this doesn't look like much, but when you start swinging it around the water, all of a sudden it's like, that actually looks like you're presenting a pretty, I mean, this is a I mean, I think a cool fly to tie, now that I'm thinking it'd be colors for like a juvenile trout, because this is, you're presenting like a 6-inch, that's what it looks like to them, a 6-inch fingerling. So that's a pretty big bite, And have you seen those George Grant style flies with the hard bodies?
Mhm.
I love those for trout and steelhead.
Do you ever tie them?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I tie quite a few of them. That just with the little wet fly hackle around the outside, the black one. Man, I think those probably triple as a swing fly and a nymph and I don't know what else, but at least doubles as that. I think they look like a few different things to those fish. So, but yeah, I would definitely match the hatch for steelhead, winter steelhead after whenever you see some activity in the water. I mean, I think last year, first week in February, I started switching over, and that's what I was saying is everybody else end of March was, there's nobody going to the river at first. Like it gets so hardcore, we're like parking at midnight and sleeping there so we can have our spot in the morning, and then by the end of the season, it's like you just roll up and there's nobody there. And if you see someone, they're looking at you, looking at me with my fly pole. Oh, you're gonna go beat a dead horse? And I'm like, yup, first cat. That's because at that point, I'm like nymphing or just whatever's in the water. And it's like fish aren't trying to eat eggs 4 months later. Why would they be doing that? So it's a little common sense.
Does anybody have any other questions for Sarah Jo? And can you give us your thoughts on the number of steelhead that we're seeing or not seeing?
Actually, right now the numbers look pretty good. It's really early, so I'm gotta go check another river because I heard a guy at the feed store say fish were jumping, but I bet they're coho's still on the Coquille River. But in the Coos River system, we have a very nice set of early steelhead. So hopefully that keeps up.
Mhm.
Our biggest issue is just getting people to not keep wild fish or keeping too many hatchery fish. I tell everybody that I'm with FFI. I'm like, hey, VP FFI. So hopefully they know I'm out there, but I'm also friendly. But it's like, yo, you know.
Well,
So,
you're not afraid to step up and say, hey, don't be doing that.
I'm not. I'm really not. It's probably my
Well,
training as a golf caddy, having to tell people what to do all the time and working with 350 dudes that leads me to have to do that. But yeah,
well, you had 18 people here tonight,
nice.
and that's pretty good. And we're looking for Sarah Jo to be a voice for our Oregon Council on conservation, because you're in the middle of it, you and our new president, Stephen, and we're looking at programs to enhance what we're doing. And I know you probably don't want to share too much tonight, but feel free to do so.
Yeah, no, I mean, we definitely have some plans in place where we've got a couple of them. Definitely the online presence. We don't even really have one. I don't feel like the expo is not the FFI for Oregon. It is just a small piece of what we do. So people are gonna not want to follow an expo all year, but they'll want to follow us, I think. So we'll definitely get a better online presence. And then, teaching fishing, like we do teach fly tying, that's great, but like where's the fishing factor? So we're hoping to during January get scheduled a series of clinics throughout the year in different areas so that people can sign up online on our website. Karen's gonna make us and get some just annual fishing trips, and maybe even be able to sponsor some of the clubs through, have them do some of the clinics too. And then the conservation side, we're going to really try to get all the groups together at least on one topic every year, try to decide on a topic early on in the year, and then just all hands on deck, try to get it done. So that's kind of the thought, is strength in numbers, that's our plan so
Well,
far.
thank you for doing that. I know I'm always reluctant to ask for too much as too soon, but I'm very excited about the revamping the council into more online presence, and throughout the year, instead of just one event, the expo event that we launch, but and other activities. And so as things open up for COVID and you can plan some outdoor activities, I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
we'll just plan them, and if we have to cancel them, we got to do it. But I think, having the thought there, at least people know it's coming when we can
Yeah.
do it, then that'll be good.
So if anybody has any suggestions, we have several new presenters for the future, but the next one is going to be with Dick Robach on January 6th. And he's going to show us a new technique on splitting tails, which we really like the technique thing. And then the other thing that happened is we had a one spot left, like the very last on the 18th class, April 14th, that I was going to teach, but I have gathered up another instructor named Jack Gillis, and he is one of the major players in the fly tying group for FFI National, and he's doing quite a lot of book, and he has a camera set up that is really going to be interesting because he's got like 4 cameras and everything going everywhere. And I'm hoping that Jack will give a presentation, and he'll be letting us know what he's going to tie at the end of our series here. So pretty excited about that too. So we'll see you guys. If you don't have any other questions, got a lot of thank yous here, Sarah.
Uh,
Yep, I think we got a happy tires tonight, and I really appreciate everybody showing up and the effort that it takes for each instructor to get all of their stuff together and their presentation and what they're going to do. So to have this many people join us is really, really great. So with that said, we'll see you guys next Thursday well, not next Thursday. What am I talking about? We're going to do Christmas first. We'll see you on January 6th and have a happy holiday.
okay.
Thank you, Sarah Jo. Thank you, Sherry.
Great job. I loved it. Bye.